You ever have one of those nights where you think, if I survive this, I better have a good reason why? That was me on my knees in the snow, in front of a billionaire's front door, hands in slush knee bleeding through my jeans, begging a man who once let me be fired as a thief to come save somebody else's little girl. 3 years earlier, I was just a black maid pushing a cart through the marble halls of Granger Tower, invisible in my uniform, so forgettable that when security walked me out over a bracelet I never touched. Elliot Granger did not even look up from his laptop. And now I was back at his door in a New York blizzard, not to clear my name, not to ask for anything for myself, but because my best friend was running out of time. Her name was Amanda. She used to sit outside his office with a headset on, juggling his calls and his crises, making his life run smooth, while her own life quietly fell apart. Outside that building, she was a single mom, in a cramped walk-up fighting stage 4 cancer, with a 5-year-old daughter named Lily, who still slept with a stuffed rabbit pressed under her chin. That afternoon, I sat on the edge of her couch, watching her fight for every breath when she grabbed my wrist and said, "Naomi, you have to find him. He is the only person I trust to keep her out of the system." I actually laughed, because the same man who watched them stamp thief on my file and never asked a question did not exactly scream, "Guardian angel." She squeezed my fingers and whispered, "He forgets people, but he is not cruel. Show up at his door. Make him look at what is at stake." So I wrapped a scarf around my curls, pulled on old boots, and stepped out into a storm, the weather app called Light Snow, which is how you know the people who wrote it were not at the bus stop. By the time I slipped in the crosswalk and hit the pavement, palms scraped knee-ripping under my jeans, while some guy leaned out his truck to yell, "Get out of the road, you trying to get yourself killed," and throw in a comment about a black girl in the middle of the street. I was cold, humiliated, and one bad thought away from going home. But every time I pictured turning back, I saw Lily's face pressed into that rabbit, while her mom tried not to cough up her lungs, so I limped through the slush until I was standing at his perfect brownstone snow resting on the steps like a magazine cover. I pounded on the door until my knuckles hurt when it finally opened. The heat hit my face, and there he was, barefoot in a dark sweater, hair a little messy, eyes already annoyed. "What the hell are you doing out here in this?" he snapped. No hello, no concern, just a man whose night had been interrupted. He squinted at me, trying to place where he'd seen this soaked woman before. "Naomi." He finally said, "You worked at the tower housekeeping, right? You should not be here if this is about the theft investigation. That matter is closed." My laugh came out sharper than I meant. "Trust me, if I ever come back for myself, it won't be in a blizzard." I told him, "I am not here for that. I am here because Amanda is dying." You could see the name hit him. His jaw tightened. His hand gripped the edge of the door. "She left for a family emergency," he said slowly, and I nodded. "Yeah, that emergency never ended. She is in a tiny apartment right now, lungs full of cancer. A little girl with nobody when she is gone, and she asked for you." He gave this small shrug rich people use when they are trying to push guilt away. "I hired her, I paid her well. That is where my responsibility ends. I am not in the business of rescuing ghosts from my past." My knee was burning snow, soaking through everything. Pride hanging by a thread, and something in me just snapped. I did the one thing I swore I would never do for a man like him. I let my legs go and dropped to my knees right there on his clean stone steps. Ice shot up my legs, my hands disappeared into the slush, and he actually flinched like I had hit him. "Naomi, get up," he hissed, glancing up and down the empty street. "You do not need to do this, Pew." But I looked up and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "I walked across half this city in this storm. I am bleeding through my jeans, and I am not doing any of that for me. I said, I am doing it so a 5-year-old does not wake up in a foster bed wondering why the one man her mom trusted never even opened the door. Snow swallowed the rest of the city. You know what I mean? It felt like just his breathing and mine in that doorway. He looked past me at the spinning flakes, then back at my scraped hands, and for the first time I saw something crack in his face. He muttered, "Damn it," under his breath. Stepped out into the cold, grabbed my arm and pulled me up. "Get up," he said again, softer now, then wrapped his cashmere scarf around my shoulders like he was mad at himself for caring. "Take me to her." The ride to her place was quiet, his car gliding from his world of doormen and boutiques into mine, where corner stores double as community centers and snow turns gray the second it hits the sidewalk. He kept staring out the window like he was seeing his own city for the first time. Amanda's building smelled like boiled cabbage and old paint. The hallway light flickered inside. Everything was small but neat: thrift store sofa, second-hand table, Lily's crayons lined up in a cup. Amanda was propped up on the couch under a thin blanket. Skin-pale eyes still sharp when she saw him. She tried to sit up and managed a weak laugh. "Mr. Granger, you actually came." For a second, he just stood there, this man whose name lived in business headlines, suddenly looking lost in a room with low ceilings. Then he moved closer and said quietly, "I almost didn't." And that honesty weirdly made me trust him a little more than any polished speech would have. Lily peeked from the doorway, hair in crooked braids, pajamas with tiny clouds, rabbit under her arm. She stared at him with that serious kid stare and said, "You are the man from Mommy's picture." And when he followed her finger to the framed office birthday photo on the shelf, him in a paper hat, cake in front of him, Amanda laughing at his side. You could tell it was just another workday in his mind, but had been a whole story in theirs. We did not dance around anything. There was no time. Amanda told him about the diagnosis, the chemo that stopped working, the home care that ended when the money did, the parents who were gone and the sister she did not trust with a goldfish, let alone a child. And then she told him what she wanted. "I am not asking for a check," she said, voice thin but steady. "I am asking you to consider taking care of her when I cannot, not as a benefactor, as her person." And he listed every reason he thought he was the wrong choice. The company, the travel, the fact that he barely remembered to eat unless his assistant reminded him. And she just gave him this tired smile and said, "You make impossible decisions every day for people you never meet. I am asking you to make one for someone you already owe." He offered the easy things, trusts and private school, and whatever number would make his conscience quieter. She shook her head. Money cannot sit by her bed when she wakes up from a nightmare. She whispered, "It cannot clap too loud at a school play. She needs a person, not just a fund." I stood by the sink, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, listening to him run out of excuses, and finally he exhaled and said, "I cannot promise you tonight. I have to talk to someone who understands this, but I will not disappear." And for a man who usually let assistants do his messy work, that was something. Over the next week, he kept coming back sometimes with his lawyer Mitchell, who sat at our wobbly table explaining guardianship and adoption in simple terms, sometimes alone with sleeves rolled up, bringing soup, carrying out trash, sitting on the floor, helping Lily with puzzles, while I helped Amanda to the bathroom. You could see the weight of what had been on us, not him, finally landing. One night Amanda asked us both to sit closer, her voice barely more than a breath. "Promise me you will not let her disappear." She told him, "There are kids who fall between cracks and never hear their names said with love again. Do not let that be her." Then she turned to me and added, "Promise me you will not let him turn you into staff. You held me together when I wanted to fall apart. You belong with her too." Just before dawn that Sunday, she slipped away, no drama, just one long exhale and stillness. I called him, And when he walked in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes red, he stood at the foot of the couch and said softly, "She deserved more than this." And for the first time I heard him mean more than a bigger apartment. Telling Lily was the hardest thing I have ever done. We sat on the floor by the couch, rabbit between us, and I told her Mommy's body got too tired and could not work anymore, that she was not hurting, that we would miss her every day. She looked at her mom's face for a second, and then that deep shaking sob came out, the kind that feels too big for a little body. I held her until my arms shook, and when she finally pulled away, she walked straight to Elliot, climbed into his lap, pressed her face into his chest and whispered, "Do not go too." He froze for half a heartbeat, then wrapped his arms around her and said, "I am still here. I am not going anywhere." And in that moment, I believed him. He did not go back to his penthouse that night or the next. He slept on our lumpy couch in his expensive suit, woke up when the pipes rattled, made awful coffee in our dented pot, burned pancakes, and laughed when Lily called them too crispy. Kept showing up, not perfectly, just consistently, and that is how the story really started to change. A few days later, after the social worker watched him on the floor, cutting crooked paper snowflakes with Lily, while I answered questions about routines and school, he pulled me into the hallway and said, "I talked to Mitchell. I want to adopt her, not just sign on as some temporary guardian." I stared at him, still waiting for the part where he decided this was too messy. "This is not about fixing your conscience." I told him this is her whole life. He nodded, "I know, and I am not doing it without you." Then he looked me right in the eye and said, "I want you with her." That was my line. "If I go with her, it is not as your maid." I said, "I am done living in rooms I cannot claim. If I move into your world, I am family or I am out." And he did not hesitate. "Then you are family," he answered, and I tucked that promise in my pocket like proof. Moving into his penthouse felt like stepping into a museum floor, to ceiling windows art that probably cost more than my whole block, a kitchen, bigger than my old apartment, and somehow empty. He had turned a guest room into a bright yellow bedroom for Lily, shelves of books, a little desk, a rabbit lamp. She walked in slowly, ran her hand over the comforter, and whispered, "It smells new." And I told her, "That just means it is waiting for your mess." We built a rhythm there. Cereal at the Marble Island school drop-offs evenings, where I found him standing outside her door, just listening to her soft snoring. And for a minute it felt like maybe we would actually get a soft landing. Then the next twist hit. Some gossip site got hold of the adoption petition, and that old theft story slapped a headline on it about a billionaire adopting his former maid's child, hinted I was his mistress, and Lily might be his secret kid, turned our grief into something dirty for clicks. And when I saw my name and face under that headline, my stomach dropped, because I knew lawyers and PR would not change the way people looked at me on the subway or her in the classroom. Elliot paced his glass office talking about lawsuits and cease and desist letters, and I just leaned in the doorway and said, "This is why people like me do not trust people like you." He stopped and asked, "What does that mean, Sons?" And I told him, "It means you think power can erase what a lie does to our faces. You can hide behind statements, but when they look at us, they will not see your lawyer. They will see that headline, you want to protect her, then stop hiding her, stand next to her, and say who she is." The next morning, he did something I did not see coming. He called a press conference and put us right beside him. Me on one side, Lily on the other with her rabbit clutched tight. He started with, "I am not here to deny rumors. I am here to accept responsibility." And then he told the truth about Amanda, about letting her leave that tower without asking what she was walking into. About the night I knocked on his door in the snow, about believing a lie and letting me be walked out. Like trash, he said. My name on live television said, I had been the one holding Amanda and Lily together. Long before he showed up, called Lily his daughter, even though the ink was not dry, and when a reporter tried to turn it into something salacious, he shut it down. "If you want a scandal, go somewhere else," he said. "This is about a child who lost her mother and two adults who decided not to walk away." Standing there under those bright lights, fingers wrapped around Lily's small hand, I realized that for once we were not hiding. We were choosing our family in front of everyone. You would think that was the end, right? We survived the storm, beat the headlines, finished the paperwork, roll credits, but life loves a second twist. A few weeks before the adoption hearing, I was digging through a box of Amanda's old photos when I found a picture tucked in the back, her on a park bench holding baby Lily. A man with his arm around her shoulders, smiling at the baby like she was the whole sky on the back. In her handwriting it said, "Marcus, he will not stay, but I had to let her know she was wanted at least once." And my stomach dropped because I knew what that meant. Somewhere out there was a father who might decide he wanted to show up now. Sure enough, a few days later there was a knock at the door, and when I opened it, there he was older, tired around the eyes, holding a duffel bag, and that same face from the picture. "You are Naomi," he said, like he had practiced it. "She wrote about you." He held out a letter from Amanda, telling him not to come near their daughter unless he had learned how to put someone else's needs first. I did not know she was gone until months after. He said, "I am not here to take her from you, I just need to know my kid is okay." Every part of me wanted to slam the door and tell him he was years too late, but I kept seeing future Lily finding that letter and that photo and asking why nobody told her, so I let him in with Elliot in the room and every boundary clear. When Lily came home from school and saw him sitting on our couch, she looked at me first, then at Elliot, then at this stranger. "Who is that?" she asked. I knelt beside her and said, "This is Marcus. He knew your mom when you were a baby." She studied him for a second, and then went straight to the point. "Are you my dad?" The air went completely still. He took a breath and nodded. "By blood, yeah," he said. "I am the one who helped bring you into the world, but I was not there the way I should have been, and I am sorry." She stared at him like she was measuring whether his apology fit, then said quietly, "You left. Not angry, just stating the facts." He swallowed and said, "I did, and I regret it every day. Your mom sent me letters, pictures, I kept them, and did not have the courage to come back." He pulled out a photo of Amanda under a cherry blossom tree laughing at the sky. "She told me this was her favorite day," he said. "Said if she ever had a daughter, she would bring her here every spring." Lily took the photo carefully, studied it, then looked up and asked, "Do you have more stories about her?" And just like that, she opened a door only she could open. "As many as you want," he said, and for the next half hour he told her stories about the version of her mom we had never met. Young, loud, stubborn, and happy. And I watched something soften in Lily that had nothing to do with me or Elliot. It was between her and the truth. Before the hearing, he came back one more time, this time with a notarized document in his hand. "This gives up any claim I could make," he told Elliot. "I am not going to drag her through a custody fight. You have been there. She deserves one home." I do not know if that made him a good man, but it was the first time I saw him be a responsible one. The day of the adoption hearing, the courthouse smelled like old paper and nerves. We sat on a bench outside the family courtroom, Lily swinging her legs between us, Rabbit in her lap, my stomach knotting itself up, Elliot's tie a little crooked, because she had been playing with it in the car when our case was called. We walked in together, Billionaire, former Maid, little girl, and stood in front of a judge with kind eyes and a tired smile. She asked me if I understood what it meant to be a legal guardian, to sign up for homework and hospital visits, and all the nights nobody posts about. I said yes and felt that yes, all the way down to my toes. She asked Elliot if he was prepared to be responsible for her in every way. If something ever happened to me, he answered without flinching, I already am. Then she leaned forward and asked the only question that really mattered. Lily, do you feel safe and loved with these two? Lily thought about it, swinging her feet, and said, They stayed. My mom had to go, but they stayed, and they make the house not so quiet. The judge smiled, banged her little gavel, and just like that, the law caught up to what our hearts had already decided. That night, back at the penthouse, we ate crooked lemon cake, listened to Lily read a short poem she had written about her mom's laugh, and our too-tall apartment, and how hearts do not need space, just people. And later, when I was tucking her into her yellow bed, she looked up at me and asked, Can I call you Mom now? My chest did that weird thing where it hurt and healed at the same time. I nodded and told her, If you want to, and she said, I do. You were there even before Mr. Elliot knew us. And yeah, that one went straight through every old scar I had. So that is how I went from the girl security walked out like a criminal to the woman whose name is on her daughter's adoption papers, from a broom closet in the basement, to a yellow bedroom full of drawings and piano music from being invisible in someone else's building, to being part of a family that makes no sense on paper but somehow works. And now I am curious about you because I know somebody listening has their own version of that night in the snow. If you were in my place, would you have dropped your pride and begged at that door? Or would you have walked away and told yourself it was not your fight? If you were in his place, would you have opened it or convinced yourself someone else would step in? And what do you think about people like Marcus, who disappear when it matters and come back when the hardest part is over? Do they deserve the chance to tell their side to the kids they left behind? Or is stepping back the only right thing they can do? I have my own answers, but I want to hear yours. Tell me in the comments if you believe family is blood choice or some messy mix of both. Tell me if you have ever been labeled something you knew. In your bones you were not, or had someone show up for you when you least expected it. And if my story hit you anywhere in the chest, tap like, share it with someone who needs a reminder that justice is not just what happens in a courtroom. It is what happens when ordinary people decide to stay, and I will see you in the next one.